Hello, my name's Julia Streets and a very warm welcome to Metaverse What Matters. It's a regular chat show filmed right here in the Metaverse, published on YouTube, so it is accessible for everyone. And in every episode, I'm always delighted to be joined by Dr. Catriona Wallace, who is the founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. It's a social enterprise and an international movement committed to supporting the development of the metaverse and the virtual worlds to ensure that they are handled responsibly and from a perspective of design, deployment, safety, culture, inclusion, operations, and function. So today, together, in every episode, we unpack the metaverse, the opportunities, the challenges, and even some areas that have cause for concern. So I couldn't imagine a better person to be with. Catriona, how are you? Are you well?
I'm fantastic. Thanks, Julia. And again, so excited to be here with you in the metaverse, this time at the beach.
Well, here we are at the beach, exactly. And one of the reasons why I'm always so thrilled to be able to take the time to ask you these questions, because I know that you are a widely acclaimed AI, ethical technology entrepreneur. You travel the world talking to people about some of the really key things we must be thinking about. So what I'd love to do actually is unpack this whole conversation using the four key pillars of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. Now, I love this framework, and in each episode, viewers can go back and refer to them because we really do get quite sort of deep into context. But before we do that, would you mind just walking us through those four key pillars?
Yes. So the first is around policy making. So we absolutely believe that so we don't make the mistakes of Web 2.0 and social media, that we need to get ahead of the metaverse being here and mainstream. And let's think of that in 3 to 5 years, and working with politicians, government officials, policymakers and regulators to ensure that we have regulation in place for a safe and responsible metaverse. So that's number one. The second is an important pillar, which is working with builders or creators to the metaverse. So all the people, the many, many, many tens of thousands of people who are the creatives, the designers, the technologists who are making products and services for the metaverse. The third pillar is around diversity, inclusion and accessibility, ensuring that the metaverse, this time again, different to technology that has gone before, that it is accessible, diverse and inclusive. And the fourth pillar is around interoperability. And there are a number of different ways we think about interoperability. One is that the virtual worlds, and we believe there's about 160 or more virtual worlds that exist within the construct that is called the metaverse, making standards for those worlds to be interoperable. The second one is about interoperability between the physical world, the digital world, and the virtual world. And the third one is financial interoperability.
So in previous episodes, we've talked about bias, we've talked about the creator community. In the next episode, we're going to be talking about interoperability. This one, I'm really keen to get into the question of regulation, because it's come up, as you would entirely expect, in other episodes, thinking about the benefits of regulation in terms of guardrails. And let's kick off the discussion with your thoughts, if you would, on why regulation is so necessary.
So it is necessary because if we think about what these virtual worlds are, they are new environments or worlds that have no government, no governance, no real policy or regulation for anything. They might have some practices and principles, but there's no governing body. So that means the types of harms that are able to occur in the metaverse, everything from an individual bullying and harassment right through to organised terrorism, the metaverse provides a platform for those harms against humanity to occur again. So it is very important that we get ahead of the technology becoming mature and start to educate and have policymakers have experiences in the metaverse so that then they can write good policy. And at the moment, we are doing a lot of work with police, so police services internationally, to start even mapping out what are the potential crimes in the metaverse. There will be crimes from the physical world and the digital world that are replicated in the metaverse, but there will also be unimaginable other types of crimes that haven't even been considered by law enforcement yet.
And I can't help but wonder, because there's this classic dichotomy, particularly regulation in every regulated and indeed unregulated, soon to be regulated industry, of the ideal timing. And I can't help but wonder, is it too soon to start encoding anything into law? Or are you seeing in that list of potential crimes and harms, the people are going, okay, so there's a priority, we need to get in and regulate that very quickly. Talk to us about this pace.
Yes. So the pace with any type of regulation or policy making is typically slow, which is unfortunate. But what we've seen capture the attention internationally is the potential exploitation and extortion of children. And that's where policy makers seem to be focused at the moment. If we think about the size of the metaverse, we estimate it is just under 500 million people using it. A vast majority of those are young people. Fortnite, for example, has 350 million users. Roblox, which is a sort of a metaverse in the digital world for children, has 50 million monthly users. And a vast majority of these are children under the age of 16. So the risks there posed by these metaverses are quite severe for children. And we're already seeing examples, Julia, of something called the dark verse, which is the dark metaverse, where avatars are being used to entice children to do uncompromising thing or to do compromising things, and bad actors record that and exploit or extort the child for money. So these are things that I couldn't even conceive that was a thing, but it's certainly something that the police are looking at now. So this is why it's critically important, in particular the cohort of children are kept safe, and that needs to be done really soon.
And who's best placed to start doing that? And at what level should that happen?
It needs to be at all levels of both private sector and government. So I really like to call out that the tech giants need to be held accountable for the platforms that they are providing. And we've already seen and talked about the problems of bullying and harassment for, in particular, women in the metaverse. The platform providers need to make sure their platforms are built as safe places for women, children, and the vulnerable. So that would be the mostly the tech giants. Then it is the government officials themselves. So whether it is politicians or commissioners or regulators, they are the ones that will need to be starting to draft and write policy. But the really significant thing, Julia, that I've learned in working with some of the commissions like Human Rights Commission, E-Safety Commission, is you need these executives to have an experience in the metaverse first to really understand that it's real and that these harms can occur.
And that's one of the things I love about this series, because what we're doing a lot now is, and in fact, I was at a conference on the main stage in London showing snippets of this series, because people can really get a sense of what the metaverse even looks like, because at the moment it's so conceptual. Unless you are playing games in the metaverse, and people are beginning to be quite binary in their thinking, it's either a gaming place or it is a or it's a place where we can now start doing business and beginning to bring use cases to mind, so people can, it kind of captures their imagination and they really understand how it works. So let me just ask you another question, if I may, which is, as you talk out to the industry, what do you want the industry to do? How can the industry step up and get engaged?
Yes, so it's all about getting metaverse ready. So a number of, whether the government organisations or private sector institutions that come and speak to us at the Responsible Metaverse Alliance, they initially come saying, what services or products should we put in the metaverse? And we say, well, that could be a strategy, or a better strategy might be starting to build your metaverse capability so that you are metaverse ready, and build your capability over the next 3 years. And things within a metaverse capability strategy, Jules, might be things like simply your talent. So do you have the people on board who know about metaverse, know about virtual reality, augmented reality, and all of the underpinning technologies of metaverse, including AI, cybersecurity, blockchain, etc. Another thing would be identity. So if you're a brand and you want to serve customers in the metaverse, how do you identify your customers and tie that to the digital world and physical world? What are the technologies that you will need in place as an organisation to support a virtual reality or an augmented reality metaverse-like experience. So getting metaverse capable and metaverse ready is the best strategy.
And this strategy that needs to be done now, because we've talked before about the pace at which this is coming. We're thinking, kind of 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years hence, this is how we're going to be living and working for most of our lives.
Right. So what we expect in the next 6 to 12 months is Apple to come to market with their augmented reality or mixed reality headset and operating system, and that will be a game changer. So that will be suddenly starting to enter mainstream. Then we have Microsoft in the background. Now, Microsoft recently shut down one of their main metaverse worlds, which was AltSpace VR, which we were pleased about because it was a pretty creepy place to go. But they will come out with some other very impressive business-oriented metaverse-related technologies. And then we have organizations like Samsung and HTC who are also going to rival to be both headset and software providers for the metaverse. So all of this we expect to really level up in the next 12 months.
So that's absolutely why you must start your strategy now. But one of the questions I wanted to ask is, are you beginning to see different players of different sizes coming together and beginning to design protocols, guidelines and standards? Are you beginning to see that already?
Yes, absolutely. So based out of the US is the Metaverse Standards Forum. So the Metaverse Standards Forum was funded by 10 of the large metaverse organizations, and it is run by an organization called Kronos, which is a not-for-profit, and they are chairing it and running it. And interestingly, the main focus is not necessarily on ethics and responsible metaverse, but is much more on what standards exist for interoperability between the virtual worlds. But I think they're doing a good job, and I understand there's about 2,400 organizations now who are part of the Metaverse Standards Forum. We at the Responsible Metaverse Alliance are working in some of the streams around privacy and safety, etc. And so that's like a global initiative. And we're also aware that in Australia, Standards Australia are starting to look at metaverse standards, and again we're supporting them in that initiative. So I think standards is a really good place, Julia, for organizations and nations and governments to start, because often standards are then adopted into policy.
And as you're traveling the virtual and the physical worlds, and I know you're on many stages talking to many different people, what is it you're most, particularly in the context of regulation, what are you most optimistic about right now?
Yes, I'm most optimistic about having regulation that reduces the ability for organizations to manipulate people in the metaverse. And so I'll explain a little bit more about what that means. So in the metaverse, because humans appear as avatars, sometimes it is difficult to know if I'm actually talking to you, Jules, and you're a human avatar, or you're an AI-driven avatar. And so what we are expecting is that brands will use what we call virtual spokespeople and have virtual product placement in different virtual worlds, that your average person, customer or participant in that virtual world might not realize, one, that the avatar is not human, or two, that the product has been placed by a brand as an advertisement or a promotion. So this ability for people to be manipulated in the metaverse is very, very worrying, and we think we're excited that there could be regulation at some stage to reduce the likelihood that people are manipulated, and that would simply be regulation around, or policy around, if you are a human avatar, then that's known, and if you're a robot or an AI-driven avatar, then that's known.
And this feels so important and present right now because, for example, I'm currently based in London. Yesterday, I was in a major European capital city talking to a large financial institution about the need for some sort of authentication around some of their communications in the context of ChatGPT and deepfakes. So when you begin to think about how that comes into the metaverse and how those worlds begin to align and combine, that whole thing about authentication and properly understanding who you're talking to just feels so important right now.
It does. And the other side of that was some research that was released just in the last couple of weeks, which also shows that the headset providers, so in this case, I'm wearing an Oculus, and I think you might be wearing an Oculus as well,
Yep.
and this is owned by Meta. Within 2 minutes of us wearing these headsets, theoretically, the headset provider can identify us. And so we're getting into that concept of manipulation plus identity, and then potentially identity fraud. These are the areas, Jules, that I really think policymakers need to double down on.
There's so much in there that we're going to take into further conversations, and I always really enjoy these discussions, because it's happening at the highest level, at the highest seats in the land, thinking about very practical things, particularly concerning getting strategies together, but also thinking about the interconnectivity and how the industry is coming together, recognizing it needs to step up right now and create some of these standards. One of the things I also love about this show is that we have many people asking questions. We have a segment in the show, it's called Ask Cat. You very generously said we could ask you anything, so brace yourself. We are absolutely going to do that. We have a hashtag, it's called hashtag Ask Cat. So do please post us your questions. One that's been coming through, actually, in previous episodes, just to kind of give people a bit of context, we've talked about ChatGPT, we've talked about the pace of adoption, we've talked about bias. And I was actually speaking at an event recently, the Global Investment Management Conference in London, and also broadcast out into Singapore. Somebody asked me a really fascinating question, which I've also seen come through the chat, is about the differences of private versus public metaverses. And your thoughts, if you would, on, do we think we're going to see any difference in terms of pace? And your thoughts about the framing and considerations of private versus public?
Yes, so if we think of what those two terms mean, we consider a public metaverse as one that's available for anyone to log on, create an account or an avatar and participate in. Private metaverses tend to be, or private virtual worlds, remembering again that there is one metaverse and a number of virtual worlds within the metaverse. So a private metaverse would be one perhaps that a certain organization has, that's a closed virtual world, perhaps available just for their own employees or just for their employees and their customers. And so it would have some closed nature to it. And I believe that that's probably a very good place for organizations to start in setting up a virtual world for their own employees. I think that would be an excellent way just to start to get the employees oriented, for the organization to start to learn the skills of how to work in and manage a virtual world before then perhaps they create a broader public one for their customers and potential customers. So I love the idea of a private virtual world because it's very early days and there's so much to learn. And, it's still a bit clunky. The technology isn't all that good. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of the concept of a private virtual world.
And of course, my first next thought goes to at what point do those doors begin to open? And how does the interoperability between the public and the private spaces interact? Because we're also hearing some state-owned spaces as well that are beginning to come through. Various governments thinking about that, those government state metaverses and the services to provide on a municipal basis.
Right. So we know the Dubai government has invested, I think it was $4 billion into their metaverse creation for their country in order for them to be, the goal is to be one of the top 10 digital economies in the world. We know South Korea is extremely advanced, and the South Korean government has over 500 organizations that have partnered with the government to create the South Korean metaverse. So we will also see some clever state-owned metaverses coming to mind. I know there's an Australian company building the Thailand government metaverse as well.
Fascinating times indeed. Please do post us your questions. Use the hashtag AskCat and we'll bring down the questions into future episodes. To everybody who's watched and is joining us right now, thank you for your support for the previous episodes. Do tell us what you want to talk about in future episodes, and we look forward to bringing you more in time as well. And I suppose, Kat, there's a final question. Is there anything you would like the viewers to do and to think about?
Yes, I would love the viewers to find a friend, get your own, borrow your child's virtual reality headset, and just get in and play around. I do a beautiful meditation, not every night, but pretty often, called Trip, TRIPP, which is a fully meditative virtual reality app. It's beautiful. And so, whether it's a nature walk or a meditative app, or fitness is huge in the metaverse as well, get in there and just play around.
And no kidding, I regularly, about 3 or 4 times a week, am boxing in the metaverse, and it is so much fun. I love it, but it's a full blow workout, I tell you. Seriously, Catriona Wallace, founder of the Responsible Metaverse Alliance. Thank you, as always, for all your thoughts.
Such a pleasure, Julia.
And to everybody, thank you for watching Metaverse What Matters. Again, find us on YouTube and all over social media. Do please share, like, tell us what you think, but also do pass it on. We're hearing a lot of academic institutions who are very keen to be showing students the content. And also we're seeing it come through on many, many different platforms. Get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. I've been Julia Streets. It's always a joy to be the host of Metaverse What Matters. Thank you for watching. And until next time, goodbye.